Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We are starting our briefing day. Our current guest is Natalia Utiupina, head of the Service for Children's Affairs of the Odesa Regional Military Administration. We wanted to discuss with her initially family patronage and how it works during the war, but the topic has been dated because Natalia will also tell us about the amended legislation when it comes to adoption of orphans during the martial law. There are quite important changes that have been introduced, launching the process that was supposed to be launched a year and a half. Good afternoon. If you follow the changes and updates of the children's related legislation, and now there have been introduced family forms of upbringing for orphans by the citizens of Ukraine during the martial law. I think that you know that children from orphanages were evacuated at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and many children from the Odesa regions were evacuated abroad. And we were not ready to such changes, and the legislation envisaged the possibility of adoption on the territory of Ukraine. We had to follow that law. But when our children were evacuated abroad, we faced some difficulties because we had to update legislation. We could only return children to their legal representatives, so those parents who did not want to fulfill their parent liabilities, but then changed their way of life and wanted to care about their children, and also the children could be returned to the relatives. Those children who stayed abroad were also limited in terms of putting them in the register for adoption. There is a new decree now, 576, that updates several other resolutions envisaging family forms of upbringing and also the adoption of children staying abroad by the citizens of Ukraine. I would like to emphasize that the new procedure allows to adopt children only for Ukrainian citizens. We do not speak about the possibility of adoption by foreign citizens. So far, it is forbidden for foreign citizens to adopt children, Ukrainian children, who have been evacuated abroad. Now we are talking only about the possibility that Ukrainian citizens got. The amendments to that regulation allow to include people into the adoption register, those people who are staying abroad. And we've ordered the local children's affairs services to include those people who are staying abroad to the registered for making it possible for them to adopt children in the future. This allows to establish contacts with the children staying abroad to the potential guardians and candidates, those children who have been included in the adoption register, and those candidates who are in our region now waiting for the possibility to adopt children will receive invitation. They will receive information about all children who have been included to the list. And if Ukrainian citizens want to learn more about children, we have envisaged the first meeting in the online format through Zoom, Skype, or some other means of conference call. Such online meetings will be organized by local children affairs services for the candidates to get to know children and to have the first contact with a child. These online meetings will be recorded according to the legislation in force and will be stored like an evidence of the first contact. After such initial meeting, and if candidates want to continue communicating with children to make the final decision to adopt the child, one of the parents, if we have a couple, have to go abroad to meet a child face to face. Both parents can go if both of them have the right to cross the Ukrainian border, or only one parent who is allowed to cross the border during the martial law. So the next step is a visit to the country of stay of the child to establish face-to-face contact to make a decision about adoption of the child. The candidates should apply to the Children's Affairs Service. The candidates should also refer to the court in the area of responsibility of the institution that cared about the child before the evacuation. And then the courts should make a decision that for the candidates to be able to adopt children. And after the decision comes into force, the candidates who will have become parents by that time could go abroad to take a child. Before the adoption, the candidates can also ask for temporary guardianship or custody for the children who stay abroad. This is also a novelty to our legislation. When the candidates want to adopt a child and they want to take the child right away, the institution caring about the children could make a decision to ensure the temporary custody for the candidates. The period of such temporary decision is for 3 months. So this means that during these 3 months, the candidates should refer to the court, should apply to the court, and to get the official decision to adopt a child. If the candidates who ask for the temporary custody fail to apply to the court during 3 months, the child should be taken away from those candidates because they fail to apply to the court, because if they change their mind. And some individual custody is not envisaged by the legislation. How such guardianship, how such custody could speed up the process of return of a child from abroad? This is considered by local authorities. So these are different types of communities from villages or from cities. And it depends on the meeting of the executive committee. Usually such committees are organized once a month. And if just people want to, they apply on the 15th of July, the meeting of the executive committee can take place on the 20th of July. And so usually it takes up to 1 month to get the official decision to have the child. So this is a temporary decision, but usually if they want to get the permanent official decision, it takes more time for courts. So these are priority cases, but we still can see some problems with the court. And so, when it comes to deprivation of parental rights, it can take several years. As for the adoption, usually it takes from 1 to 3 months. The court meeting can be appointed right away, and can be the session can be held just the same month. But we should also wait for 1 month for the decision to come into force. And before this regulation was adopted, children who had been evacuated abroad after the start of the full-scale invasion were in a kind of a legal limbo. So they could not return to Ukraine, they could not be adopted, and they could just stay in the places, in the centers that were allocated by the foreign countries. Yes, you're right in your understanding. And that is what we saw. And unfortunately, we faced new challenges because of the full-scale invasion, and we could not change the whole legislation during one day, because there is not only one regulation, but we had to amend a whole range of regulation, secondary acts, etc. And the children could return to Ukraine to their biological parents, and also they could return to their relatives. So these are cases where we should not fully follow the old legislation as it was before, when children stayed on the territory of Ukraine. Even if there were legal grounds, if the children could not be included in the register for more than a year because it was prohibited. And only now with these amendments, we could put on record such children. So what did children do there? So they stayed in a safe place, and they were also accompanied by the officials of the institutions that left with them, and the hosting partners supported those children to the maximum extent possible. So children were provided with the possibility to study online in our schools. There were different events, so they continued their lives, but they were limited in their rights to be adopted by families. Were there cases with Odesa children or children from other regions that reached the age of 14 years old? What happened with them? Yes, we had such cases, quite a lot of cases when a person reached legal age, and after that, children could, according to our constitution, select the place of their residence. Some children wanted to come to Ukraine. Some of them even wanted to join the armed forces of Ukraine. Now, other children wanted to come back to Ukraine because they had some relatives here and they didn't want to stay abroad. Some of the children they returned to Ukraine to continue their studies in the safe territories of Ukraine. Others could just chose to stay abroad, and we don't have a right not to support such children, so they continue staying abroad with the main group of children, even if they already turned 18 years old. They are accompanied by the official representatives of our institutions. There are cases when an 18-year-old person wants to move to the United States to continue their studies. So this is envisaged by our constitution. So these are constitutional rights of such children. We cannot prohibit that. And as far as I understand, so there are a lot of cases. I cannot say that we had hundreds of such cases, but there were dozens of such cases. I don't remember the precise number at the moment. And were there those residents of the Odesa region? Yes. Can you remind us the following how many children have been evacuated abroad, children staying in different institutions from the Odesa region. For example, to Poland, we have evacuated more than 600 children. Separate groups were evacuated, for example, 75 children from the orphanage to Romania, 26 were evacuated from shelters in Poland to Romania, and some other children from some other educational institutions. More than 1,000 of such children have left abroad, and now they are staying in Poland, Romania, Turkey, Lithuania, and also on the territory of Ukraine. Thank you. And could you just briefly explain the procedure of family patronage and how it works during the war? Yes, of course. What do we mean by family patronage? This is kind of an alternative for the institutions. So we wanted to develop kind of a network which could be closer to the family forms. And children can stay there on a temporary basis until their parents until their parents change their way of life. So these children can be returned to biological parents, or they are waiting when their parents will be deprived of their rights as parents to obtain the new status. The patronage has been introduced for the cases with the families who can just accommodate such children. The patronage is covered and from the state budget. Such families can receive more than 10,000 hryvnias as their salary for temporary upbringing such children. And also there is some money provided to support children. Yes, this is like a separate amount of money. The main task of the patronage is for such people, to continue interacting with biological families, for biological families to be able to get their children back. So there is a special procedure. They also have an everyday diary where they just record how they work with biological parents and with their children. There are some disadvantages of this process. There are limited periods. So first it was like for 3 months, now for 6 months. But if there is no possibility to work with the biological family, children wait in patronage for their parents to be deprived of their rights, and this can take even more than 1 year. And now we see the prolonged periods of stay under patronage because it takes a long time for courts to consider the cases. This is the form of temporary adoption, and there are now some changes. If a child stays in one family without parents, and there is another child in the same community without parents, and now the changes allow for the patronage educators to adopt both such children. In our region, we have 12 such patronage educators, and the most cases we can see in Belgorod-Dnistrovsky Rayon. Such families have children all the time. And this is a very important alternative function that helps children to stay in the family forms of upbringing, so they stay in a family and not in an institution. And if someone today wants to become a patronage educator, please do not hesitate to refer to our services for further consultations. So you will learn more about legislation and more about the patronage procedure. What can you expect from this state? So you will get information. I have a question from a journalist watching this press conference online. Are there any deadlines for local authorities to put evacuated children on record for further adoption? Yes, there are general terms. A child should be put on record during 1 month after getting such legal grounds. So what do we mean by legal grounds? If a child has death certificates for both parents, and we know that this is an orphan, or there is the decision of court on depriving parents of their right, or if parents are on the wanted list. So there is the list of main reasons for a child to be put on an adoption record. So during 1 month, a child should be put on record after receiving legal grounds. And So if it was more than 1 month and children stay abroad, they should be immediately put on record. And I would like to repeat that this week we have ordered all our children affairs services to provide information about putting on record all children staying abroad who have now the right to be put on record. So there is no deadline, but you just urge all the services to do it immediately. Thank you. We don't have any more questions from our journalists. Thank you for being with us today. Hopefully, you will come to us again with other positive news. Thank you. Thank you. That was the briefing of Natalia Utiupina, the head of the Service for Children's Affairs of the Odesa Regional Military Administration. The next briefing will be at 2 p.m. We will have with us online volunteers from Slovakia who are raising money to buy a tank for the Ukrainian army. Stay tuned.